Today we got a big mix of drone and camera news. We got price drops, regulatory clarity, a couple launches, probably one that's happening right now. And yes, some of these updates will directly affect whether or not your DJI gear keeps getting updates in the US. So let's jump in. So if you've ever thought that FPV looks amazing, but also looks like an expensive way to crash your drone into the grass, yes, then this is the kind of update that can change kind of where you're coming from on that side of things. Now, this reporting is coming from the folks over at Drone XL. Antigravity is adding a flight simulator to its A1 platform, and at the same time, it's running a global 15% discount across the entire A1 lineup from January 27th through February 9th. Now, the simulator is designed to run inside of the A1 Vision goggles, which means that you can actually practice without putting the drone in the air and crashing into stuff. The idea here is pretty straightforward. FPV has a pretty steep learning curve, and Antigravity is giving new pilots a way to build muscle memory and get comfortable with the controls before buying or flying for real. Buying it by crashing into a light pole. The simulator is going to become available starting January 29th via a firmware update, and that's also positioned as a way to keep training when weather or just life keeps you grounded. Now, the bigger picture here with the A1 is that it's not just another FPV quadcopter drone, right? It is an action camera strapped to the top. The A1 is built around the integrated capture system that records 8K 360 video into its built-in 360 camera, and that matters because it removes the usual compromises with external mounts, extra batteries to manage. There's no added weight throwing off balance if you wanted to strap a 360 camera to your FPV drone, right? There's no camera brick changing how your drone is going to fly, but you still get the immersive FPV flight experience. And now you can capture footage that you can reframe later in post, which is a big part of why people shoot 360 in the first place. Now, on the retail side, Antigravity is also expanding its availability. The A1 is now available on Amazon. I'll have a link down below with that 15% off discount. It's also at Best Buy and other official channels following what was described as a strong CES showing. They had a very big booth. It was a very nice, I think I have a couple of their bags. But another important point Antigravity is leaning into right now is FCC compliance. With ongoing attention around restrictions tied to the FCC's covered list, Antigravity says that its A1 models remain fully compliant and that import, distribution, sale, and operation continue without restriction. As for discounts themselves, it applies to all three bundles globally, the Standard, the Explorer, and the Infinity bundle, and that's going to be through February 9th. This feels very targeted. Reduce the fear of first-time FPV pilots with the simulator, make the price easier to justify with a limited sale, and talk a lot about the fact that your drone isn't the drone that you can't buy or potentially fly because of FCC issues. Now, if you want to see how stuff like this actually looks outside the studio in the real world with real shoots, real light, and real decisions made in the moment, I share that work on Instagram. Now, you'll find behind the scenes clips with my 360 camera, finished shoots, quick breakouts, that don't make it into longer videos. It's the most current look at what I'm shooting and how I'm working day to day. I've got a link down in the description. Go ahead and follow me there. Sticking on the Insta360 trend though, their CEO, he's doing some stuff. So what do you do when your brand is basically synonymous with one category because you named it Insta360 and you want people thinking about something completely different? Insta360 CEO posted an image of what appears to be a completely new Insta360 camera alongside text which translates as heading towards new focal lengths. That phrasing is doing a lot of work. Insta360 has built its modern identity around the idea of ultra-wide perspectives in the 360 capture world, and this message reads like an intentional signal that something new is coming in terms of focal length choices or an overall shooting approach. And based on what's being discussed around that image, there are some open questions rather than confirmed answers. Whether this could be an APS-C mirrorless style system, and if so, would it be a fixed lens or an interchangeable lens system? And what the mount strategy would even make sense to go with, right? When DJI potentially went this way, we were talking about it as being part of the L-mount alliance. But what's clear today is that Insta360 and their leadership have chosen to publicly tease a new product without really any particular information, but with language that points at focal length. So whatever it turns out to be, they want people thinking beyond just 360 because, well, 360 cameras don't really have a focal length. It's the whole length of all the focals. So until we have hard specs or an official product reveal, this is going to stay in tease territory, but it's a deliberate tease. Insta360 really is moving into new focal lengths in a serious way, and if so, that could put them into conversations that they haven't traditionally been a part of. But staying on the action cam drone beat, we've got some pricing updates. If you've been waiting for an affordable way to add the DJI drone system into your mix, then this might be the lowest price that you're going to get while that inventory still exists, at least here in the United States. So as of the week of January 26th, the Mini 4K is on Amazon at its lowest point across all three of its bundle configs. So the single battery kit dropped to $225, the two battery is $289, and the Fly More combo is $339, which represents about a 25% off depending on the package that you pick up. Those numbers undercut last year's Black Friday pricing. Now, timing is going to matter here because of where things stand with the FCC. Since they added all foreign-made drones to the covered list in December, authorized inventory that's already in market has become more valuable. The Mini 4K was authorized long before that change took effect, so existing stock can still be sold and flown legally. But new DJI models aren't expected to receive FCC authorization beyond the Mavic 5 for the foreseeable future. That makes entry-level options like this one more significant than they would be in a normal market. Now, for a lot of buyers, the Mini 4K's biggest advantage isn't the politics, it's its weight. So in practical terms, for hobbyist use, that means less paperwork, less friction, no registration fees, or anything related to registration requirements at that threshold. You're flying for fun. Now, if you're a Part 107 commercial operator, you still have to register regardless of the weight. But for recreational pilots who just want to go out and, fly their drone around out of the box, sub 250 grams remains a real advantage. So if you're wondering what $225 actually buys you, you're going to get 4K UHD video up to 30 frames per second. It's a 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor with 12 megapixel photos. You're also getting true 3-axis mechanical gimbal with tilt, roll, and pan stabilization, which is one of the biggest quality separators between toy drones and drones that actually produce usable footage. Video bit rate's going to top out at 100 megabits per second here, which puts it well ahead of other budget models like the Mini 2 SE that were capped much lower. Transmission uses the DJI O2 rated up to 10 kilometers for ideal FCC conditions. Though in real world use, you are still bound by visual line of sight rules anyway. Wind resistance is rated up to level 5, about 38 kph, and a max takeoff altitude is supported up to 4,000 meters. Now, on top of basic flight performance, DJI does include beginner-friendly automation like quick shots, Droney, and Helix for repeatable moves without manual piloting skill. Panorama mode is included with Sphere, and DJI Fly app tutorials are designed to walk you through most of the controls and flight patterns to get you started. At this price, this isn't just a deal, it's arguably an access point for drone usage, especially if you want something light enough for casual recreational flying without stepping into heavier regulations. If you've been watching drones from the sidelines, waiting for an easy entry moment, this pricing might actually be the trick. And be on the lookout here on the channel where I will be doing reviews of a handful of drones from Captain and Potensic for more entry-level drones that can get you into this market, into flying drones for the first time, but not really break the bank and still give you a decent product to fly around with. But speaking of the FCC, I'm getting lots of questions asking, is my DJI drone gonna get stuck on old firmware in the United States? And now we have an answer, and we actually have dates attached. So this is coming from reporting by Drone DJ, but the FCC has actually confirmed that existing drones from DJI, Autel, and other foreign manufacturers can continue receiving firmware and firmware updates in the United States through at least January of 2027, including critical security patches. Now, this became urgent because you had a handful of regulatory changes that kind of collided when the foreign-produced UAS components were added to the FCC covered list. Now, around that same time, equipment authorization rule changes affected how devices on that list could use what's called permissive change process. That's the pathway that manufacturers typically rely on to push software and firmware updates without seeking an entirely new certification each time from the FCC. The concern was pretty simple, but huge. Once a drone is treated as covered equipment under those rules, even drones already approved and already sold could have been potentially blocked from receiving firmware updates through normal channels. And with drones specifically, firmware isn't just cosmetic, right? It affects flight control stability, battery behavior, security vulnerabilities, and basic compatibility with things like iOS and Android over time. Now, the FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology issued a limited waiver that temporarily suspends the ban on Class 1 permissive changes for drones and drone components authorized before December 22nd, 2025. And in practical terms, these updates are allowed when they mitigate harm to US consumers, including security patches and updates needed for operating system compatibility. This protection now runs through January 1st, 2027, while the broader policy gets reassessed. But just as important here are the boundaries. This does not reopen FCC authorization for new foreign-made drone models going forward. It does not allow new hardware changes requiring certification, and it does not reverse the broader crackdown framework here. It draws a line between protecting devices already in circulation versus approving new ones. So if you already own a DJI drone and you've got a consumer model up through all the way into their enterprise platforms, the key takeaway is that your drone will continue getting firmware updates now in the US. So this prevents immediate worst case scenario situations where millions of drones effectively get stranded by paperwork instead of safety. But between now and January 1st, we'll see whether this becomes permanent policy or just temporary relief. And that brings me to this video's sponsor, which is me. I am a professional photographer specializing in portraits and events, and I shoot with natural light when possible. I keep sessions relaxed, and I aim for images that feel real rather than staged. I work efficiently, I stay unobtrusive, and I focus on capturing moments as they happen. So if you're interested in working together, details, availability, and my recent work are linked in the description below. Our last story, if DJI drops an Osmo Pocket update with a meaningful sensor change and faster frame rates, that's not just a refresh. That's going to change what people are going to carry every single day. Now, this is coming from reporting by various sites, including photorumors.com. The latest information circulating points to a rumored Osmo Pocket 4 announcement and the possibility of a Pro variant. Now, Osmo Pocket cameras live and die by three things: sensor performance in mixed light, stabilization quality, and how quickly you can operate them when something happens right in front of you. And the leaked standard model features target all of these things. So on the sensor side specifically, the standard model is described as moving to a 1-inch CMOS sensor, and that is a step forward for low light performance and dynamic range compared to smaller sensors typical in compact stabilized systems. The other headline spec that we're seeing is that the standard model will have 4K at 120 frames per second, compared to jumping straight into higher resolutions. But stabilization remains central here to this product. It's described as using the standard 3-axis mechanical gimbal. Again, still one of Pocket's defining advantages over purely electronic stabilization when you're walking and talking or moving quickly through scenes. We've also got refined tracking aimed at faces and objects. On usability for vlogging and quick composition, there's mention of a 2-inch rotating OLED screen. And that rotating screen matters because the pocket style shooting often involves switching between self-facing framing and outward framing rapidly, or switching between horizontal and vertical configurations. There's also going to be a dedicated zoom button intended for quick access functions like mode switching or other shortcuts. So small tweaks that actually try to help you when you're operating one-handed while moving through crowds or events. Battery capacity is listed at 1,545 milliamp hours with an estimate of roughly 20% more runtime than the Pocket 3, potentially 200 minutes, which would be a significant increase if real-world performance matches anything close to that number. Connectivity is also getting an update here with Wi-Fi 6 support for faster transfers and app integration alongside continued access via the DJI Mini app, basically leaning into that shoot fast, move files fast kind of concept. There are also some creator combo accessories included in these leaks, like a wide-angle lens attachment, battery handle, mini tripod, protective case, plus the mention of a possible new add-on including something referred to as a frame tap module. We've also got rumors for a Pro model variant, which is where things get super interesting because it adds to the complexity. Now, the Pro version details describe a dual camera setup combining a wide angle plus a roughly 2 to 4x telephoto lens with optical zoom. Variable aperture listed as f1.7 through f2.8, Hasselblad color science, larger dual sensors together are described as dual 1/1.1 inch CMOS sensors with instant lens switching, potentially higher end modes, including the possibility of 6K support, plus pro level controls, all packaged into what would likely be larger, like a larger camera block integrated into the rotating concept. Pricing estimates here are putting the standard creator combo at around $699, and that the Pro version might not come until Q2. But even if half of this holds true at launch, especially a 1-inch sensor plus the true high frame rate options, then the Osmo Pocket line is going to stay pretty relevant for creators who want stabilized footage without carrying a full camera rig. Now that's it for today. If you want to support what I'm doing here, obviously memberships, super chats, and gifts are available, as well as all my links below on where to follow me everywhere I am. I've also got links to the gear that I talk about and the gear that I use. All those links do go to help the channel. As always, the easiest way, the freest way to support the channel is to hit like, subscribe, comment, and share. Those are always free and go a long way to helping me grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.